And good morning, everybody. Congratulations, you made it through the week. It's Friday. My name is Bryan Armentrout with the Food Safety Chat, and I am the founder of the Food Leadership Group. And today we're doing something pretty cool. I learned something new this week. Food Safety Chats they don't just have to be one-on-one. You can actually add other people. So this is pretty cool. So I've got two people ganging up on me today. I've got Jill and Tia with Food Safety Catalyst, food safety consulting firm. Ladies, how are you doing today?
We're doing great. It's so fun to be on here, and look at the first time to have two guests.
Yeah, we like to be pioneers in space, right?
Yeah.
Like we like to be the first.
More the merrier, right? And we're hitting time zones too, right? So we've got Mountain, Central, and Eastern time.
We do.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
Right.
So everybody, one of the things we love to do here, and with that, right, I am in Loveland. Ooh, I can't type this morning. I am in Loveland, Colorado, and let us know where you're at. Say hi, and that's what's kind of fun about this. So Jill is in Minnesota. We were just talking about accents here a little bit ago. And Tia, where are you at today, Tia? You're always moving around.
I'm in Baltimore. So I'm at home in Baltimore. Yes.
Yes. Do you know Rod Wheeler, Food Defense? He lives in Baltimore.
Actually, we are connecting with him soon. So we haven't met. We have seen each other virtually, but we haven't actually met. So we are looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Rod's an awesome guy. And he's been on a guest here before, too. I'm happy to have him back on in the future. Robert's here. Stephanie in Germany. Gosh, good to see you guys. It's always nice to have this. And one of the things, if you're new to the chat, one of the things that's interesting, we talk about all things food safety and food manufacturing and all this fun stuff. But we do it in a way that's interactive and a little bit fun, I hope, right? We want interaction. This is not a lecture, right? We're not going through a PowerPoint. We're just sharing our knowledge and experience, and hope that you do as well, so that we can help elevate food safety. And so that's always a ton of fun. So today we're going to be talking about something that it's so important in your operations, and that's new employee onboarding at corporate or plants. It's super, super important. You got to get everybody off on the right foot. And Lance is here and Tina. Nice. We're seeing some new names. Oh, look at
Austin from Madrid. Hola.
Oh, look at you, Austin. Got some papas for me. Oh, I'm jealous. Danny, nice in the UK. Beautiful. So one of the things we love to do, and depending upon where in your world, your drink may be different. And this is Friday. So if you're Danny in the UK, you may be able to lift a pint. But for us here in the US, we're still on coffee and tea. So please join us, everybody, for the sip of our morning beverage. Oh, hey, I love it.
Tennessee supporter. I have to get my Badger mug.
University of Tennessee is one of the most beautiful campuses. Very pretty location.
Very true, and they have changed it a lot even since I graduated. So I need to take some. I'm from Knoxville, so I go back and I need to walk the campus. I'll probably get lost, but it is very beautiful.
So let's kind of dive into our topic. We wanted to kind of start off with something fun here, right? Because we all know this scenario, right? So who wants to volunteer to help me?
Sure, I will. Why not? I mean, that's why we're here. We're your guests, so of course we'll volunteer.
Exactly.
It's like, nah, I don't want to do that. So one of those key points that we talked about a little bit ago is employee onboarding. And generally, this is how employee onboarding goes. I'll be the supervisor, and Jill's going to be the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed new employee coming into the production facility, super excited for this new opportunity. She just got out of college, from the University of Minnesota, food science. She's out there ready to make her contribution. So she comes in, goes through the front office, and goes to the training room, and this is what she's greeted with. God, what time? Okay, yeah, all right. What time? Yeah. Okay, hey, you new girl. What's your name?
Jill,
yeah. Okay, whatever. Jane, yeah, I need you to come over here and sit in front of this monitor. There's some different crap I need you to go through and learn. It's like GMPs, and I think we got some stuff on food safety or whatever. There's a couple other things too. At the end of these, when you go through each of these, let me know. I'm going to be over outside smoking or whatever, and I need you to take this quiz at the end of it. Hint, the answers are pretty obvious, so don't overthink it. And you got to pass this quiz. So we got to get through this stuff pretty quick because I got to get you out on the floor right away. Can you do that? Jill,
sure, I can do that, of course.
All right, great. Yeah, okay, whatever. Go over there. We got product to make, and we'll get through this crap, and then we'll move forward.
Oh,
all right.
When are we gonna do the other stuff?
What? Yeah. Well, are you going to be trouble? Just do the stuff, and I'll be back in a bit, right? And scene, right? That's my shitty acting. And we all know that scenario, right?
Yeah.
The messages that have been implanted in Jill's brain right now, right? Food safety is not important. We do training just to go through the act. You're not important to the business. I'm going to treat you like crap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's just get through this day, right?
Yeah.
It's like
I just learned a lot about the culture at this organization in just like 60 seconds.
Exactly. And how do you undo that, right? The damage is done.
It's hard to. And, you know, I mean, the whole piece around, oh, you're going to have a quiz. The answers are either, you know, don't think too hard, or they're on the back, or, you know, whatever it happens to be, right? Like, seen it all. It's just telling that person that you really don't value food safety.
Yeah, exactly. And you all know what I'm waiting for is the first break, so I can actually hightail it out of there right now.
And then we wonder why we have these high turnover rates on new employees. It's like, oh, this is a tough job, and they're just not used to that. No, they've learned that this is not a place that they want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, research shows that if you don't have a great onboarding plan, the majority of your employees are looking to leave within the first 3 years.
Yeah.
And think of all the time and money and expertise the company has poured into that person to bring them up to speed. And now
nothing.
It's nothing. Exactly. Yeah. I've actually heard now in the food industry, there's facilities that can't manufacture because they don't have enough employees. They're having to shut down lines because they can't run at capacity.
Right. Exactly.
Just think, right? The scenario we just had, like, what motivates anybody to actually show up the next day, or even show up and be engaged?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if I'm an employee on a line and I'm running a machine, and I've been doing it a little while, and I'm kind of getting a little bit of experience, and something doesn't sound quite right. The machine's kind of going clonk, clonk, clonk when it never made that noise before. And I go over and I grab my supervisor and I'm like, hey, Tia, you know, my machine's making a little bit of weird noise here. And she goes, what? Yeah. And she looks at the clock and says, crap, you know, it's a half hour till the end of shift. Just let it go. Let the next shift worry about that. Right.
Yeah.
What that person, you know, I may ask her 1 or 2 times in the future. And if I get that same response, I'm not going to ask anymore. Right. I know.
You know what the answer is going to be.
Exactly. Yeah. And I kind of refer to those as hidden factories, right? So you're on the floor and there's a work instruction on how to run the machine. And the person goes, oh, okay, Bryan, you know, glad you're here. We're going to do some training. Did you read the work instruction? Yeah, I went through all that. Okay, ignore it. Here's how you actually run the machine.
Yeah.
Right. Which makes a huge difference. Because like you just talked about, right? When we want people to be here and be engaged, and retention is such a big deal right now because there aren't enough people.
Yeah.
And I forgot who actually put out this study, but it was like, great onboarding improves employee retention by 82%. Yeah. 82. I mean, that's a significant number.
Oh God, that's huge. I didn't even, wow, that's surprising. I wouldn't think, wow.
Yeah. So like if you're dealing with retention issues, we recommend starting with onboarding, because if you can get that type of return back, that's amazing.
Yeah. Right. Because what if Bryan's conversation would have started like, we've been waiting for you to be here. We are so excited to have you here and we need you. Yeah. We have a full day today to get you to meet people, to see where you're going to be. And then we've got events over the next several weeks, because we know to learn all about our company and how complex it is. You're not going to learn it in a day.
Right. Yeah. And don't worry, we're going to pair you up with a buddy, and that person's going to teach you everything you need to know to be successful here.
Absolutely.
Now, part of the problem with that earlier scenario, and we see this all the time in the food industry, is the person that they're grabbing to introduce the employee is more than likely the supervisor or manager off the floor, right? And they're busy and they've got their own stuff to do. And so they're at the end of their shift and they're tired and they're cranky and they want to go home. So of course they're not going to make a good impression. I mean, it's the same thing we do with visitors, right? We have a ritual we go through with visitors in the plant. Why don't we do that with employees? Because we want to show them how great we are. Why do we think that doesn't apply?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, even if we think back to other areas where people onboard, and a really visible one here in the US, maybe it's because elections are coming, right? When a new president is elected, they have 100 days, right? The first 100 days in office is what they get to like prove themselves. And they do that because the greatest way to understand if you're going to have success or failure is in those like first 3 to 4 months, 100 days. If it's not looking good, it's probably not going to be good.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And then you also called out that there's a process, right? Like there's a process that's written that people follow. The people that's a part of that change, right? That onboarding, they don't come by and say, hey, Jill, we need you to come over here. And you've never heard about it. You didn't know you were talking to the person. You have no idea what you're about to show until 5 minutes before, right? Like it's planned. People know how they're supporting this onboarding process. They understand the person that's coming in and what they're going to be doing, what tools they need to be successful, and what tools you don't have, right? Like what are they here to also help solve and to be a part of? Like those are that's what you need to make sure that you put into place before a person even shows up.
Oh, exactly. Right. So it's kind of like the example I was thinking of plant tours, right? So I gave crappy plant tours because, I would kind of go through and just give the mechanics of, okay, well, this is the receiving area. This is the holding tank. It holds 44,000 gallons of raw milk. This then goes in there, right? Right. The people who give good tours give the color and the history of why those things are there, right? So I remember there was one guy in one of my past companies I worked with, Roland, who gave fantastic tours. I loved going on his tours because you would learn something new every time. He'd been at the plant for 20 years. And he would go in there and be like, oh, Tia and Jill, we're so glad to have you at our plant. I get to show you around today. And as part of that, I'm going to show you how we make all of the wonderful dairy products that we sell to you in the marketplace. Everything that you see in Kroger and King Soopers and Wegmans. So shout out down there for our Wegmans guest, and which is an awesome. I miss Wegmans. I lived in Buffalo for a while. And Wegmans was, if you've never been to a Wegmans, they're amazing. Anyway, right. So you are, painting this picture, and he would paint this wonderful picture. Your onboarding person needs to do the same thing, right? So we need to train the onboarding people as well of how do you do this, right? So we're consistent and we're providing that expectation because, again, to Tia's great point, right, is put yourself in their shoes, right? You're this new guy, you're starting out, you want to do well, you want to figure out what's expected, and you need to communicate that, right? So why not start off on the right foot and say things like, oh, welcome, we're super glad to have you. We make protein bars, by the way, there's some here on the table. Try some, right? They're absolutely amazing. We love our products. And at the end of the day, we have a few extras from the lines where they didn't quite package up and stuff like that. Take them home, give them to your kids. Let your friends taste them. We love that. So you're here for, right? And then you move forward in that. It seems simple, but God, does that make a huge difference?
Yeah. And even along that lines, right? We always think of onboarding as the day one when somebody physically shows up, or I, log in and that's my first day. But really, onboarding, to get technical, can start as soon as you've had any interaction. Yeah. And especially after someone's accepted an offer, like that whole period of keeping them warm and showing them your culture. So instead of, you can have protein bars on the table there too, but like, what if you pack some up and actually shipped them over to that person? Like, here's, like, we're so excited you're here. Like, here's a sampling. We can't wait to meet you. Like, what are the things you even do ahead of time to show how important they are, that they have purpose, that you appreciate them?
Yeah. And it's critical. It's critical to retention to have this process and to spend time on your onboarding plan, because, I know people personally that has joined an organization in and out of the food business, right? Like it's in every part of the industry. And I know people that started an organization and I'm like, hey, how was your first week? And they're like, it's a mess. And I don't think I'm going to be here past a year. And it's just because of those few first day of onboarding, they've already made the decision that they're probably going to leave the organization.
Right. And the analogy is, it's almost like a date, right? So you're showing up and you're meeting this person that's this company, right? And you're like, oh, geez, what do you like? What do you do, right? And you're trying to figure out if that relationship is there. Your work, look at how much time we spend at work, right? 40, 50, 60 hours a week, plus transit time and all these type of things. This is an important part of your life, and you have to enjoy it. A previous company I worked at had a really great internal motto that I think kind of applies here as well, is they would say, we need to be easy to do business with. And so they would apply that externally. So if a customer was having a hard time and they couldn't get their orders in the system correctly and they were getting frustrated, we would ask ourselves in meetings, are we being easy for our customers? And if we said no, we would try and figure out a way. So we were flipping it around to get their perspective. So instead of what was easy for us, what was easy for them. And I've kept that ever since. It's a great way to look at things.
Yeah, I agree.
So Marcel had a question here. Thank you for the question. We love these guys, so please continue with this. How do you guys stay consistent with improving the work culture? Because training other employees to include others is also important. Yes.
Yeah. The one thing that I think about with this question around staying consistent is coaching. And the big piece of that is that you're constantly having those conversations. You're being consistent, right? To make sure that someone's staying on the path to where you want to get to. And so, the way that we talk about it, and for people who, been in the catalyst world, we talk about it in this way where, between training someone in the execution of something, that path is longer and harder than what people think. They think I'm going to train them. Same with onboarding, right? You're going to train them one day and then they're ready to fly. In reality, it takes a while for people to get to the point of execution and to make sure that they're staying consistent. Coaching is the key to that. Having those coachable moments, making sure that you're staying connected, making sure you even have a coach that you can stay consistent, stay on the right path. When you fall off, which human nature, it's going to happen, that you're going to revert back to your old ways of doing things, right? Or even think about, I can do it faster here and take a shortcut because you're trying to move fast. Coaching helps you stay on, remember why we don't take that shortcut. Think about ways that we can prevent other people from taking shortcuts. Remember why you're on this path. Remember why we don't do things that way anymore. Having those coachable moments is so important to staying consistent.
Absolutely, 100%. And so we lead by example, right? So those little subtle messages that trainer gave in our little beginning scenario, people pay attention to those things.
Oh yeah.
Now think about this, right? This is going to be right? Temporary workers. Ooh, how are we training those guys, right? If it's bad enough for the people we've hired, now for temps, it's even worse. It's like, hey, are you the temps? You awake? Okay, awesome. You on drugs? Okay, all right, follow me, right? And
I thought it was just, do you have a heartbeat?
Yeah, exactly.
Got a pulse, you're coming with me.
Right. And a lot of times, if we're being successful in our business, those temporary workers transition to full-time workers, right? We find the good ones and we keep them, right? Yeah. And so why would you start off that way?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Well,
yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, no, please.
Well, I was going to say, even finding the good ones, I think this is one of those things where do we set people up for success? Because honestly, everyone is a good one. It's just figuring out where we align and where their strengths are and how to tap into that, like purpose and appreciation. Right. Because, nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, you know what? I'm going to screw up this today. I'm going to do my worst job. I'm going to be ornery and irritable to everybody I run into.
Yeah.
That's not usually how people wake up.
Yeah. And people are people, right? They have different personalities, different ways of learning, different ways of looking at things, and you need to understand that. Yeah. And a lot of times, right, that fit isn't there, right? That job that person is performing, unfortunately, isn't the right one for them. Well, maybe there's something else they can do in the company, or maybe this just isn't the right line of work for them. In that scenario too, you need to figure that out quickly and help them reach the same conclusion, which is, this is probably not the right thing for you.
Yeah. And how do we support hiring managers? Because in all of this, even Marcel, with your question, part of it is how many hiring managers, if you're out there, how many of you already have a full plate of work? Like you're a doer, you get things done.
Right.
That's probably
Absolutely.
the hallmark, right, of being, in food safety. We get things done. We have a full list. So do you clear your plate when you have a new hire so that you
It's
can
almost
actually
impossible, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I've got the quality report due. There's the management meeting coming up in 2 hours. Oh, hey, Bryan, we got some new people out front. I need you to train them.
Right.
What?
Mhm.
Right. And
Yeah.
if I go into the room with that energy with those new people, oh, they're going to pick up on that. You the new guys?
Yeah.
You the new guys? All right, yeah, follow me.
Right.
Right. Exactly. So having that process, that onboarding process, where again, people know ahead of time, the hiring manager understands their part of it, right? As well as cross-functional support helps prepare for when that person shows up.
Mhm.
Yep, absolutely.
Classic
And
case
yeah,
of it takes a village.
mhm.
So, and I think the other
Absolutely.
part is hiring managers, like we think we have to do it alone, but really, if you have the process, then you include other people in it at different points to help support you
Right.
and
Right.
create that onboarding experience.
Yeah, and I think this kind of segues into our next talking point here, which is who should do the training, right?
Mm.
A lot of times it gets dumped on quality, right?
Yeah. On quality or on the hiring manager. Sometimes only HR is doing it. So they're trying to fumble through food safety stuff. It's who should perform the training? Probably everyone.
Yep.
Everyone that's at the organization from a everyone function standpoint should be a part of onboarding. And your part would look different, right? Like if I'm in HR, my part looks very different than my food safety people as well as my maintenance people. But in reality, if you're working in a facility, then you need all of those aspects as a part of your onboarding. And it doesn't mean in the first week, right? Like Jill mentioned, it might be 100 days that you need to get to people and you need to train and you need to be on the floor and you need to be in meetings. You need to, like, all of that process is over several weeks, not one day where you meet 10 different people. And by the end of the day, you're like, I don't know who I met. I don't know who I talked with.
Yeah. And from the trainees side, right, it's too much information to process, right? They're not going to retain that. They're not going to retain
Not
that.
at all.
No, and then it becomes kind of a checklist, right? Like trained, check. GMPs. I expect you to follow them. And we go so quickly from I gave you information, which is actually education, not training, but we now call training education. Education is now training in our world.
Yes.
So how do we extend that out? Because the practice is really what we want to see. How do we do the follow-up? How do we reinforce? How do we check in a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later? Because then why, if we're not able to put that in up front, then why are we surprised in 6 months when we're like, oh, you didn't know to do this?
Yep.
Huh. But you were trained, you checked off.
Oh, well, we need to do more training.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Please
So
no.
ideally, right, the person responsible for OSHA, right? So, workplace safety and things like this, it's normally, depending on the size of the plant, the HR person, or you have a separate food safety person, they should be doing that training, right? If you throw me in there to do it, I know a little bit more than you do, but not a whole lot more, right? They're the experts in that area. And it should be, hi, I'm Jill. I'm the workplace safety person here at the plant. Here's what we do things. Here's the difference between a near miss and an actual recordable. And here's why I never want to have an actual recordable, because we're here to make sure that you're safe. And if there's anything you ever see that's wrong, come talk to me directly, right? And then quality's doing the quality thing. So as we talked about, good manufacturing practices and food safety and these type of things. Now imagine too, during the training, the plant manager just pops his head in the training room and goes, "Hey, I'm Bill. I'm the plant manager. Glad to have you on board here. My office is upstairs, right? I'm normally here between about 7 in the morning and 7 at night. If you have any questions or there's anything you see that you're not sure about, come talk to me, right? We're all responsible for things here. Everything ultimately falls on my plate, so I need to know these things. So if you see something, I need to know, right?"
Yeah.
And then he just leaves, right? Oh, okay. Wow, that was awesome, right? So now you've got the right people doing the right training.
Right.
And that training then kind of goes back to, and this is something that I believe really strongly, and I had talked about in my book, and we'll go into that a little bit later on. But ultimately, the person who's responsible for, I would say, this is just a ballpark, 70% of the actual training is that person's supervisor on the floor training, right? We think that training means PowerPoints and quizzes and these type of things, and that's an introductory part of it. But the actual training takes place on the floor. Right?
Yeah.
So if I'm the supervisor and Tia is my new employee, it's going to go like this, right? So, hey, Tia, glad to have you on board here. So you've gone through some of the basic training. Great. That's just to kind of introduce you to how things work. You're going to be working on the production floor in the filling area. And I've assigned you to Jill, and Jill is going to be your mentor, and she's going to show you the ropes. So you guys have at it, right? And then I leave. And then Jill starts showing things. Okay, well, here's how we do this. You're going to be at this station. You're going to be running this machine, and let me show you how things work. First couple of weeks here, I just want you to watch. We'll learn and ask questions, and I'll show you why we do things and these type of things. Now, during that period of time, I'm going to swing back around to Jill, and I'm going to ask a question. How's Tia doing? Right? And there's only one of three answers. It's she's doing great, right? She's picking up stuff quickly. She's got a good attitude. She's getting along well with everybody else. Notice in that group, right? There's technical and personal, right?
Right.
Yeah. Both are important. She's doing great. I think within another week or so, we can cut her loose on her own and see how she does. The middle answer is she's doing okay. I'm having to repeat some stuff. And I think with supervision, she'll be fine, right? But it's going to take a little longer. And of course, the third category is, oh my God, no. Oh, Tia's terrible, right? She's already picked 2 fights with employees in the break rooms. She showed up late 3 days last week. No. We need to cut bait here and find somebody new, right? And that's fine, right? It's much worse to keep that employee where it's not a good fit, right? Because it's going to cause disruption. And we've all seen this in plants. I can walk into a production facility I've never been in before, start chit-chatting with people on the floor, and I figure out pretty quickly who to talk to. And then I'll say, who are the troublemakers? And they'll go, that person. They know, everybody knows, right?
Yes.
And like, why? Why is that? If that person's not happy here, why do you do that, right?
Right.
And one of the questions I love to ask when I go to plants and I'm assessing someone is I'll go on the floor and I'll talk to the supervisor. And I'll say, okay, Jill, hi, how you doing? I'm Bryan. I'm VP or whatever. I'm here. I'm visiting. You're responsible for this area, right? Yep. This is my area of the plant. I'm responsible for filling and this whole operation. Oh, great. So this is your whole team. Yep. I have 10 people who report to me. It's amazing. And I get to know that, right? So let's say a little bit earlier, I saw somebody not wearing their hairnet quite right? It's kind of up a little high. You know how people like to do that, get the hairnet up as high as they can. And I'm like, Jill, what's the rule in your plant on hairnets? Oh, yes, we have to have hairnets down. They have to cover our ears, no jewelry, right? Okay, I'm a little confused then. Can you please explain to me why Tia, I keep picking on Tia, why Tia isn't wearing her hairnet correctly, right? And then Jill's eyes are going to go, right? What? Right? Oh, gosh, I don't know, right? And I leave, right? Now Tia's going up to Jill and say, whoa, what are you doing? What do you mean? Why are you wearing your hairnet like that? You know how to wear the hairnet. That muckety muck who just came in here, some bigwig from somewhere, I don't know. But I just got embarrassed because of you, right? So let's go over again the proper way to wear hairnets. Oh, and by the way, I'm watching you now. Right. If I'm Tia, right, and Jill is the boss, Jill runs my world, right? It's kind of like that old saying, you don't work for a company, you work for a boss, right? If I'm Tia, I want to make sure that my boss is happy, because if my boss is happy, my life is easier and I get good reviews and things go well and all these things, right? So in my viewpoint, that's where the training really takes place, right? Is on the floor. So it's critical, right? We train the new people. What are we doing to train the supervisors? What are we doing to train the managers?
Yeah. And that's something I was going to mention on, like, your manager, right? Your supervisor, your manager, and really throughout the organization also needs a great onboarding plan, right? And their onboarding plan looks a little different, but I think it still holds to the same concept of doing this training, right? Understanding training, understanding the on-the-job training, and then making sure you partner it with ongoing coaching of their role and making sure that they stay on track so that they can execute, and as a manager, so that they can lead, and so that they can lead not just from a technical standpoint, but from a people standpoint. And that some of that is talked about in training, right? But in order to get to the execution, you really do need that ongoing coaching.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of those things, and this is the difficult part, is it's like art, right? It's like we know what we like, but we're not quite sure why, right? It's like, I know I don't like that, but I know I like that. It's kind of the same with training, right? It's like, okay, I know that's a good employee, but I'm not quite sure why, right?
Yeah.
I always come back to an example. There was a plant manager I worked with, phenomenal plant managers. His employees loved him. And he was always out on the floor interacting. And if they were doing safety trainings, he would do goofy things. I remember one time for a safety training, he dressed up as Batman and he ran through the plant as Batman.
Wow.
Hilarious.
With the proper PPE? Oh.
It was during downtime, I believe. And I was sitting in his office one time and a supervisor came running in and there was some emergency on the floor. And the supervisor starts going, we have this big problem. Don, what are we going to do? And I know what to do, and Don knew what to do. But what he did at that next point was huge for me. I've retained it ever since. Is he sat back in his chair and he's like, that's interesting. Tell me, supervisor, what would you do about that? Mm-hmm. And the supervisor's like, oh, yeah. And starts going through it. And he goes through about 2 or 3 different things. And he thinks, I think option 3 is the correct thing to do. Mm-hmm. And Don goes, you're absolutely right. Go do that. Yeah. It would have been so easy for Don or me to jump up and run out there and solve that for him. Right. But Don empowered him and said, you're responsible for this. What is your judgment relative to this assignment? Right. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that's part of this big piece of training too, right? Is as supervisors, managers, we want to keep everything right. Cause that's how we're going to be successful. And I'm going to keep all the information to myself and not share. Ooh.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of how we've been trained, right? If we think about, I grew up right here in Wisconsin, our American our public school system shows we're going to reward people who have answers. Mm-hmm. The way you get ahead is by having answers. And that carries through in so many aspects of what we see in our work today, right? If you ask more questions, it seems people will think you don't have information. Yeah. And so we place this really high value, especially I think when we're in food safety and quality, that we're supposed to have answers. We're like the answer people. Like, yes, exactly. I can find that. Yes, I can get that. Yes, I can do that. Yeah. But now when we shift, we have to go from being a doer to a leader. Mm-hmm. And that is so hard for people. That requires rewiring up here because your role now isn't, I'm going to go out and do all the training and I'm going to go out and do all this. It's how do I get other people involved? How do I create a community that can hold each other accountable? How do I really make these connections so people feel that they have purpose? Yeah. And that can be really hard. And it's not just individually, because sometimes those are skills that are a little outside probably our normal wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. But once again, our organizations set our roles up that we are doers. Right. Yeah. And so part of what we really need to consider is what are the things within the system that maybe need to be shifted so that we can have better success. Because I think Marcel, I think you had something on there, or I'm not sure who, but like right when we retrain and finally you get this fatigue because even a trainer's like, I can train them, but they're leaving in 2 weeks. Right. Yeah. Okay. There's something bigger broken. Right. So how do we look at these other parts that really feed into all of the other parts we're talking about? Because even getting to a point, Bryan, I love that you are like, I don't know, what do you think we should do? Right. Yeah. That is not the normal response that most people that I know in food safety and quality, no matter what your role is, are going to do. Right. We're going to think we need to jump in with an answer first, and then we may have an afterthought to be like, oh, what do you think?
Right. Exactly. Something else that's even more abnormal is if they came up with a solution that wasn't necessarily the best solution that you came up with, and you still said, okay, try that out. Come back and let me know. Mm-hmm. Having those conversations and being able to lead in that way allows that person to go out and say, oh, this is what happened when I did that. I thought of a better way to do it. And now that person has ownership in the way that they do work, but they're also not afraid to make mistakes. They're also not afraid to go out there, do what they think is right, learn from it, and do something different. You know, I remember being new in an organization, and I made a decision that caused a lot of product to be destroyed. And it was a big ticket item, at least for me. I mean, I'm not a $1 billion company, but it was a big ticket item. And I remember issuing it to be destroyed, and the product was gone. And my operations counterpart came up to me and was like, "Oh, we didn't have to destroy that product. We could have done X, Y, Z." And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't think about that." And it was like, "Okay, next time, you know, think about it this way and learn to, you know, like there's other things that to think about." And I remember we had a conversation about it, and that was the end of it. And then the next time it happens, now I have a mindset of how do I save this product? What else can we do? What, you know, did we try this? Who else can I talk to? Right? Because I obviously didn't talk to all the right people to figure out the best solution. But I was able to learn in that environment and make some mistakes and not get ran away. If someone had been like, "Oh my God, Tia, why? Blah, 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 blah," and all of this corrective action could have come down, then maybe I'm looking at leaving the organization because I can't make mistakes here. I can't have an answer that might not be the best answer. You know, I have to always have the correct answer. And that's hard.
Well,
It is.
And it is hard because people believe they've created that environment when in reality we haven't. Or not very often, because there's still always the follow-up. Right. Even just think even our core kappa. Who did this? Why was it done? How, blah, 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 blah. Right. But it always goes back to like who. We're always looking for this space of like, who did it? Where are we placing blame? Instead of what can we learn from this? Yep. What could we have learned? What did we need to know more or differently about this situation?
Yeah.
And so that's completely this culture part, which I know is part of our, you know, onboarding discussion because it's displayed there, but the parts that we carry through to help people know, like, this is a place we want to work because we're not looking for blame. We're looking for like better solutions collectively.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so to Tia's point, which was a great one, right? So if you're the quality manager in a plant, your team is the operations manager and the HR manager and the plant manager, right? That leadership team in the plant, and you need to learn to trust them. If you set yourself up in an adversarial relationship where I'm quality and what I say goes, and I'm going to fight you every time you're going to have a really, really hard time.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to have a cross-functional team supporting your onboarding as well, because then now they're invested in that person. And for me, for my operations counterpart to come up to me and for us to have that conversation, we had built that trust. We respected one another. He knew I wanted to make the right decision. I know that he wants to make the right decision. And so we built this relationship that's all a part of that onboarding, right? So that when we're in a difficult situation together, we have that mutual respect. We know what we know what the goal is for both of us. And so having that interaction so early in the onboarding process is important.
Yeah. There was a plant I worked with in my past, big plant, lots of people, and the plant manager was quick to anger. How's that? And if something went wrong, usually one of the first things out of his mouth was, "Who did this? Who's to blame?"
Yeah.
And the organization figured out that if something goes wrong, the goal is not to fix it; it's to make sure you don't get blamed.
Right.
Ooh, boy,
that's tough.
That's
just a downward spiral to disaster.
Absolutely. People start to hide things, right? And in reality, you're not running an efficient organization because people just don't want to get caught.
So, my goal, and this is going to be hard for people on this call to swallow, but I'm going to put this out here, right? As technical leaders, right? As managers in food safety and quality and things like this, if you have a team, one of your goals on that team should be to push down as much responsibility for activities as you can. What? Right? So let's say you put together in the plant the quality report. Is that something that your lab manager can do?
Right.
Okay, you can do it yourself, sure, right? Hold everything in. But by delegating it to that person and sitting down with her and saying, "Hey, listen, you know, this quality report, I think this is something that you can take care of. You're gathering all the data anyway. Tell you what, let's start working on teaching you how to put this together and how to present this to upper management, right? So you're making your life a little easier, and you're teaching other people how to do things that you do, right? Your goal should be to make yourself replaceable. Now, here's the corollary of that. if I'm giving a lot of those activities to people on my team who can handle those things, I'm freeing time up for myself to manage up. Right?
Yes.
Now I have more time to talk with the plant manager about things that I'm worried about. Now I have more time to deal with corporate and customers and complaints and root cause investigations, the things that I need to be doing as a manager. And you're showing your team that you trust them.
Yeah. And that is very difficult. You know, like Jill said, you have to rewire the way that you think about it, because we want to have the answers. So when you are a person that's like, I don't have the answers anymore because Jill's doing the report, and if someone asks me, I'm going to have to say, hey, reach out to Jill instead of Tia having the answers. Yeah. That's a very different mindset, and it takes time to make that change. And it takes an environment to support that change. And I mean, you're really hitting on what we focus on with our technical leader path, because like once you learn, okay, I need these leadership qualities, right? I need these leadership skills that are the basic level of being a leader. Then, you know, it kind of moves into what we call strategic leadership, where you really start to focus on delegation and executing with others, and really being that leader in the organization, so you can manage up and hire more and focus on more strategic work versus running reports and doing things that you should have let go of a long time ago, but you want to execute. You want to have the answers, because again, that's how we're wired. That's what we're wired. That's why we got promoted, right? We got promoted because we were doing the report and we were doing the tasks on the floor. We were doing these things, but in reality, that's not enough for you to be the type of leader your organization needs.
Yep, exactly correct. And as I've looked back over my career now, right? So I led quality assurance in food companies for over 20 years. And do I care about my customer complaint rates? Do I care about my KPIs? No. The thing that I look back on my career as the most important thing is, who are the people that I had contact with, either people on my team or people I interacted with, who through my help, hopefully a little bit, have been able to move on to promotions and higher roles. And I can name, like a decent amount of people who are now VPs of QA and food safety in large food companies who worked with me. And I know that I can pick up the phone at any time and we can talk and I can help them. And if they need a favor, I can help them, right? Building that community within food safety and helping promote people with it, that's huge, right? That just makes you feel so good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think remembering that it's a journey. Yeah. Right. So when we talk about like, okay, today I'm going to learn how to be a more effective communicator, where I'm at today is going to be very different than where I'm going to be in a year or 5 years. And so what's effective today and how I'm practicing that will look different. And so even considering about how you evolve as a leader so you can better support your team members. And I think, like you said, Bryan, it's that managing up, down, and across.
Yeah.
That part is what takes even more finesse and is another layer as you start shifting from doer to leader and then into really like the next level leader.
Right.
Absolutely. Right. And that's an important point, Jill, because even if you're, big wig or in a company, let's say even then 5% of the employee base reports to you. That's it. Right. Yeah. 95% don't. Which means you don't have direct authority over them. So you have to work through and use your diplomatic skills and your negotiating skills and your people skills to get things done. And if you're not able to do that, I can tell you, right, as a quality manager going in, as we talked about earlier, and saying, I'm the quality manager, you need to do this. Never works.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
No, and that's why, and it's not always age, but right, that's why there's maybe this old adage that, right, as we get older, we get wiser, because then we can build and learn on these things. But right, we see that even as we are learning and becoming different and new leaders, that it's still that building on things as well.
Right. And so I think kind of the subtopic we're talking about here, right? So we started about talking about employee training. We need training too. As managers, right? We need training too.
We do.
Right? How to do good onboarding and all, how to get things done in the company and all these type of things, right? We need that. Everybody, you need to grow through your entire life. And as we kind of look at, kind of those things of, as you look back in your life again, I guess I'm feeling kind of nostalgic today. I don't know. But, right. when you look back, right, is okay, how did I do these things and how did I help in these type of that? Those are the important things, right? Those are the important things. And with the training piece of it, right, back on our subject of training, this applies at all levels too, is how do you know that, right? So one of the questions I love to ask guys is if I'm on the floor and I'm talking to Jill, the supervisor again, and I'm like, okay, Jill, this is your area. Yep, my area. And this is your team. Yes, this is my team. I got a super awesome team. Okay, great. So what are the different roles here? Well, I've got a lead over here, and this is my filler. Oh, there we are. And these are the type of things for training that we do. And I'm like, awesome, great. So your team's all trained. Yes. Show me. Right. Mm-hmm. And the response I always get back is, well, I just know in my head, right? I know that they're trained. I'm like, that's okay. That's great, but that doesn't work. Right. And training, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this, is I've always viewed training in different buckets, right? There is the training we've been talking about, the traditional GMP type trainings, and then the on the floor training, the other piece, right? Mm-hmm. So if I am Tia and I am a new employee, there's certain things, if I'm running that filler, there's certain things that I need to do. And Jill has a checklist in her mind of what those things are. Here's how you load the carriage. Here's how you check the heat sealing. Here's how you check the weight of the product. Here's how you make sure the machine's running at the right speed. Here's what you do if the machine goes down. Here's what you do at the end of your shift to break it down. Here, all these different type of things. Yeah. Put that stuff down. Put that stuff down, right?
Job specific.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so then, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just agreed, right? Because I think that's a big area of opportunity. And that's a lot where we hear the tribal knowledge that gets passed on. And oh my gosh, when that person left, oh, now the equipment's doing this and nobody knows how to fix it.
Right.
But right, that's also a whole nother like level of maturity when we start talking about like having our team members, setting them up for success. Yeah. That's the next layer.
Right. So as a supervisor, right, you can then start standardizing things. One of the things, this is always a fun exercise to do. I'm sure everybody on this call, if you work in a plant, you've done this, right? Let's say you have 2 shifts and, first shift is day shift, and then it kind of switches over around 6 o'clock at night for the night shift. So during first shift, right? So Tia's been running the filler, right? And she's been twisting dials and doing stuff all day long. And by the end of the shift, that machine is running beautifully, right? It's running at the right rate. The product's coming out beautifully. Everything's awesome. And then second shift comes in. And the first thing that operator will do, I would bet money on this. The first thing that operator does is they change everything. And you're like, oh my God, what? Right? And then you go over and you ask them. And you're like, well, the machine is running perfectly. Why did you change everything? And the answer back is always the same, right? I don't care. This is how I run the machine.
Mm-hmm. That's why you have to disconnect all those dials so that, like, no matter how much they move it stays the same.
Yeah, to make it fake.
There's a master dial somewhere else.
On that subject, I'd heard in the past that the button you push in the elevators to shut the door. In most cases, those aren't real buttons.
No, I heard that too.
Yeah, it's just to make you feel like you're doing something.
Yeah.
But Bryan, that's a really good point. And I've seen it when I worked in operations. And I worked second shift. So first shift was running. We get the download on how's everything going, and then second shift comes in and they want to change some dials around. And one big initiative that we were going through at the time was documenting equipment settings. And then if you had to change equipment settings off of Centerline, you had to document why. Mm-hmm. And the next shift, if they came in and their equipment was off of Centerline and there was no reason, then they went back. If it started messing up, they would document it and then take it back to the setting that it was at. And so this whole documentation process was so important. So this is the thing with like training, and then when it comes to like coaching or on the job type coaching. So my team, which was second shift, would come in and the equipment is running great, right? And so they didn't want to touch the dials at all, but nothing was documented. So I would coach them, take it back to Centerline, document what's happening, and then move it back to where it was. And I remember my team was like, well, no one's really documenting this and no one's really doing this process. And even if they wanted to move it. And if they weren't documenting it and I came down, I'm like, hey, why is it off center line? Why is nothing documented? Well, no one's really doing this. And I remember having the conversation around, I can't fight our battles of other shifts if we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Yep.
And so really talking with them on, it's important for us to do the right thing so that I can have those battles with other shifts and with other leaders in the organization. I can't do that if you're not doing what you're supposed to do.
Exactly.
So how do I make it easier for you to do? For you to do the checks and do the work, right? That's needed so that I can have the conversation off a shift. And when I had that conversation with them, things kind of clicked for them. I remember I had the conversation once and I never had that issue again because they really understood that, okay, Tia is going to have the conversation with other people so that I stop coming into work having to change the dials and having to do extra documentation. And so for me to get to that point as a supervisor, as a manager, to be able to have that conversation, that's the people piece, right?
Yeah. Well, hopefully Bryan will join back with us in a minute.
Yes, absolutely.
But I think that's, it is about that documenting. And, I think one area, right, that, how often do we document things? We talk a lot about being on the floor and for running equipment and processes, and that's all really important, right? We want consistency for our customers,
right?
But even sometimes, how often do we think about that for different support roles as well? Or how often do we hire somebody in and they're in a support and on the food safety team and they're maybe running something like maybe they're in charge of your QMS systems or something. Do we have procedures around what they're doing? Are we recreating every time someone comes in and it's like, oh, but now this is how Jill wants to do it, or this is how Bryan wants to do it. And we're helping them figure out the role.
Right.
And I caveat that with, there's a balance because we know roles do shift and they do have transitions, but we shouldn't have to create the wheel every time somebody new comes to go figure out how that report was ran.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, so Tia made a couple of really good points here too that I wanted to emphasize. So as managers, one of the things that we need to strive for is consistency in our decision making. So one of my internal rules I've always followed is that if someone comes to me with an issue, that they already know what I'm going to say.
Right.
They're just coming to me for the approval to do that, right? And the more consistent you are like that, the smoother things are going to go because your team is already going to start taking the actions ahead of time before they even talk with you because they know which direction it's going to go.
Absolutely.
The other key point is for processes on the floor is that people also need to know what to do right. But here's the weird thing, and people don't think about this. What do I do when things are wrong?
Right.
So the machine isn't working right. The sealer isn't working right. The temperature is wrong, whatever, right? What do they do? When do they go to the supervisor and say, hey, boss, I need some help here. The sealer's not working correctly, right? Or do they just power through it, right? Which is the absolute wrong thing to do, right? Because then you end up with product on hold and QA's got to go back and figure out where the problem happened, right? Fix it when it happens, right? The rule in quality, right? For every step in your process going through for a major step, 10x the cost, right? Through receiving, processing, packaging, warehouse. Catch it where it happens.
Right, exactly.
And hopefully you're in a system, and once again, levels of maturity within a system when it comes to food safety culture. Like I've worked in a company where we actually had control plans. We didn't just have an SOP on how to run equipment or a process, but we actually had data collection plans on how do we measure the process. We had control plans, separate document for when something goes wrong, here's what we do. Because that should have dust on it. We shouldn't have to pull it out. But if it does happen, we're going to make sure that we have a tool for people to be able to start navigating. And then we're also going to have a process where we let them know, like, if this doesn't work well, let's talk about it. And then next time, if this happens again, let's review it.
Right.
And then after that, if everything's good and we're clear, like you just make that decision next time when it comes up.
Yeah.
And so even this process of being able to help them move into a place where they can make decisions closer to the process and in a more timely manner is, once again, how do we do that and have better leadership skills to help them?
Yeah.
Do it.
Right. And I didn't say the conclusion of the operation piece, but Jill, you are definitely you're right on the money with that. One of the reasons why we were going through this exercise is to document what happens when something goes wrong.
Right.
What are the correct settings if your equipment's running this way, or if something needs to be fixed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you are documenting those things, we found out that, oh, this part of the equipment needs to be fixed. We didn't even realize it was broken, or it has wiggled free, right? We didn't even realize that it could wiggle free, right? So those are the type of things. It's about how do we run more efficiently through the day, because eventually that will be savings. And we know that if your equipment is not stopping, if your equipment is not breaking down, you have less non-standard work, and therefore you're producing safe, quality product. And that's all of our goal. And so you have to try to eliminate that non-standard work of equipment breakdown, of changing knobs, of doing things outside of the ordinary, because that's when you run into issues.
Yep, absolutely. And we hate to think this as managers, right, and leaders within our companies, but like it or not, the farther away from the floor, the less you know, right? So the operator knows the most about that process. The supervisor, the manager, the plant manager, regional QA, the farther away you are, the less you know. Sorry, that's the way it is.
It is the way it works.
Yeah.
Right. But I also think about the same thing applies for your own work too, right?
Right. Yeah.
The further people are away from what you're doing, the less they understand.
Right.
And so how do you lean into that to be able to help better communicate, to help make it relatable? The same things apply.
Right. Absolutely. Exactly.
Great. Wow. Time's flying here. It's time to bring this back up to the 30,000 foot level. So, so obviously you guys are experts in this area and have tons of good information here. Thank you. So what are some kind of the closing thoughts here? What would you like people to take away from our talk today?
Well, gosh, leadership doesn't just come naturally always, right? You may have leadership skills that you've used in different arenas, but as you're growing and as your team's evolving, as your roles or your career evolves, like your leadership skills need to shift along with that, because what got you here will not get you success where you're going.
Absolutely.
And
then I will also say, take a look at your onboarding plan. Do you have an onboarding plan? Do you have an onboarding process? And where can you help close those gaps and make it really representative to the culture you want your organization to be, right? And it might not even be, okay, we're not there yet, but this is the type of culture we want to be, and we need to start it from day one. And for onboarding, if your onboarding plan is a day long, a week long, a couple of weeks long, think about what are you missing from that process. And if your people are coming in saying, I'm going to lead this organization within a year or so.
Yeah. I'm going to add to that. When you onboard and you make those changes, please make sure you go back to your team members that are already there. Because one of the biggest divides you can make is, wow, why do they get all of that and they get to experience this and I still have to do it day after day the same way?
Right. Exactly.
Good point.
It's a process. It will not happen overnight. And if you think you can move food safety culture in a day, it's not going to happen. It really is a journey.
Well, so you mean buying a banner and having a pizza party that's not enough?
You know what? If it was, we all would be amazing. We all probably would be billionaires.
Yeah, true. Wow. Amazing conversation. Thank you, Tia. Thank you, Jill. Always love having you guys on.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. And thanks to the audience. Wow. Such great comments and engagement. Thank you.
Yeah. You guys make the show for sure. So one of the things I wanted to do today, and I'll kind of switch this around so you can see my email, so I'm going to give away a copy of my book today to the first person who emails me. My email's here. I talk about this in the book quite a bit around quality systems and training and people and these type of things. So if you'd like to learn more about that, drop me a line. I'll send you a copy free of charge. I'll get it in the mail today, hopefully. And these all these cool views. There we go. I'll get that off to you. And then hopefully you'll get some value out of that. And again, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Tia, with Food Safety Catalyst. Always awesome having you guys on. And with the Food Safety Chat, of course, we're here live on LinkedIn and YouTube every Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain where I am, 9 a.m. Mountain where Jill is, and 10 a.m. where Tia is in lovely Baltimore. So we hope to see you back here next Friday. I'll have a new guest on. The always fun Joe Lano is on next week, and we're going to be talking about an interesting topic. I'm just going to tease it. So it's something you definitely want to check in for that. So join us back here next week. Everybody have an awesome weekend. We really appreciate you investing your time and learning and growing. And we learn from this too. So thank you as well. So everybody enjoy and go have some more coffee.
Awesome. Thanks, Bryan. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.